The Miami Dolphins are looking to be in for a pretty rough season in 2025. Tua has been struggling with concussions the past few seasons, and I think that his health is going to be a major concern this year. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle is a dynamic wide receiver duo, but they're rarely both healthy at the same time. And when you look at the Dolphins defense, you don't see much because it's basically non-existent. I don't know many of the players on this team. Some of them are going to be coming back from injuries, specifically Jalen Phillips. And I think just overall, the secondary is looking very, very rough. It's just not going to look like a great season for Miami. And they started off with a road trip to face the Indianapolis Colts. Now, that's a good way to start the season because the Colts are arguably worse than the Dolphins. I think their offense is going to be pretty rough to start the season. When you look at the options they have at quarterback, Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, and they don't know who the starter is going to be between those two. By this point in the season, as an NFL team, you probably should have had that figured out. And I don't think it's because they're both doing great in the quarterback competition. They have some decent weapons. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor is great, and Josh Downs at wide receiver is great. So is Michael Pittman. The defense, not as good. I think they have some solid pieces there, but I see Miami being able to move the ball a little bit more. And just the Colts offense is, even though Miami doesn't have a very good defense, I cannot see whatever quarterback they have out there being able to move the ball much. I think the Colts struggle a lot on offense early in the season, which leads to a early Miami road win.
Then Miami has two games in a row that are in the division, kicking it off with a home game against the New England Patriots. And we are fairly high on New England this year. Drake May, after starting his rookie season on the bench, came in and looked like a very, very good quarterback. I'm very excited to see what he can do in year two with a better wide receiver core that now has Stephon Diggs and an offensive line that went out and got Will Campbell, who I think is going to be a very, very good player in the NFL. Defensively, they have one of the best young corners in the league in Christian Gonzalez. His rookie season was cut short due to an injury, but last year he took a huge step forward, and I think he will continue to be very good. But I think the biggest X factor that the Patriots will have this season is running back Trevion Henderson, who has been an absolute stud during the preseason. Kicked off his rookie year with a 100-yard kick return in his first ever touch in the NFL. I think they are just going to be able to use him so well in this offense, whether it is out of the backfield or lining him up out wide. And he probably is one of the best pass blocking running backs as well, even as a rookie. I just think the Patriots are going to be so much better than the Dolphins, especially considering, like Jonah said, the Dolphins defense is going to be very, very poor this year. I think they dropped their first divisional game to the Patriots here. And then on the road in prime time on Thursday night against the Buffalo Bills, I don't even think this is a contest. The Bills offense is just so good with Josh Allen, the reigning MVP, leading them. Even if his wide receiver room is pretty weak, he hasn't ever really had a good wide receiver room, so he will continue to produce and be in MVP conversations as long as he is in Buffalo. Dolphins really won't stand much of a chance here. Maybe they can hang around towards the beginning because their offense will be good and hopefully everyone is healthy in week three, but the defense will not be able to slow down Josh Allen. Dolphins drop to 1-2.
Then it's another division game, the third one in a row. That's a Monday night matchup with the New York Jets. And I think the Jets are going to be an intriguing team, trying to copy the Bengals with that college connection. The Jets doing it, though, with Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson. And it seems like Fields has been struggling a little bit in practices, which does pose a concern for this Jets offense. I do think with all of the weapons that he has, that he should be able to figure it out. And while the Jets might not be a top offense in the NFL, they are going to be able to score some points. They'll have a few games where they really click and get a lot done. And I think that this game against the Dolphins very well could be one of those games. They don't have the home field advantage this time, but they do have the advantage of going against a very weak Dolphins secondary, like we mentioned earlier. This is one of the teams that I think Fields maybe can take advantage of through the air. And when you look at the Jets defense, you have names like Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams. They're going to be really good. And I think they'll be able to slow the Dolphins down enough that they will get this win and drop the Dolphins to 1-3, heading into a matchup with the Panthers, who finished last season very hot. Bryce Young finally starting to look like he was worthy of being the number one overall draft pick. And they added a number one wide receiver for him in Taylor McMillan in the first round from Arizona. That connection already looking to be pretty solid. And I think that the Panthers are going to be a really, really good team this year. Still probably not going to be a playoff team yet, but a significant upgrade from what we've seen in previous years. And in the future, very, very scary for the rest of the NFC. But this season, not quite as much. I do think they're better than the Dolphins, though, and they're going to get this win at home, dropping Miami to 1-4.
Chargers are the following week at home, and I do think Jim Harbaugh is doing a very good job of building a offense to help support Justin Herbert after one of his best regular seasons last year, only throwing 3 interceptions until he got to the playoffs where he proceeded to throw 4 interceptions against the Texans as the Chargers got blown out. But this year, I do think Justin Herbert is going to rebound from that playoff loss and lead this Chargers team to compete in the AFC West. You're bringing in Omarion Hampton, who is looking like he will be the starting running back, considering Najee Harris had his little incident with the firework. And the wide receiver core does look fairly good. Ladd McConkey was very good last year as a rookie. Quentin Johnston also made some improvements and actually could catch the ball last season. And then defensively, even with the departure of Joey Bosa, you still have Derwin James, who, despite the fact that he has some injury concerns when he's on the field, is still one of the best safeties in the league. I just think this Chargers team is more complete than this Dolphins team. Justin Herbert will be slaying the rock all day long against this Dolphins secondary that is basically non-existent, and the Chargers will get the win here. And then it is a road trip against the Cleveland Browns, a reunion for 2 first-round draft picks this year. Kenneth Grant for the Miami Dolphins and Mason Graham for the Cleveland Browns, both from the University of Michigan. And this is going to be a pretty interesting game because both these teams have their strengths and their weaknesses, and they just happen to be on the opposite sides of the ball. The Browns' offense is going to be one of the most interesting to watch this year because we have no idea who the starting quarterback will be at this point in the season. It could be Joe Flacco, it could be Kenny Pickett, it could be Shakur Sanders, it could be Dylan Gabriel, it could be Tyler Huntley. We just don't know at this point. But defensively, like I mentioned, you already are adding Mason Graham to this defensive line that has Myles Garrett, who is arguably the best defensive player in the NFL. A secondary that just constantly gets better and better with new draft picks, led by Denzel Ward. A linebacker core that is also very solid. And then, like we've already talked about with the Dolphins, that offense is really explosive. It's speed that kills when you have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Devon Achane in the backfield. And if Tua is able to get those players the ball, then Miami's offense is going to be able to produce even against some of these better defenses. But then when you look at it on the flip side, with this Miami defense, I do think with the weapons that the Browns have on offense, Jerry Jeudy, whoever the starting running back might be, whether it's going to be Dylan Sampson or Quinshon Judkins, I do think whatever quarterback's back there will be able to produce in this game, regardless of how good the Miami offense will be. The Browns defense can get stops. The Dolphins defense cannot. The Browns win this game, dropping Miami to 1-6.
And the difficult schedule does continue these next few weeks with a pretty brutal 4-week stretch, to be honest. You got the first game on the road, and that one is against the Atlanta Falcons. Michael Penix Jr. in his first full season as the Falcons starting quarterback, hoping to prove that it was worth spending a first round draft pick on him, only for him to sit most of the season behind Kirk Cousins. And I think the Falcons are going to have a very potent offense this year. You look at their weapons that they have, Bijan Robinson at running back. You have Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and Kyle Pitts to throw the football to. I think they're going to have a great offense. And the defense, a solid secondary, a little bit weaker on the line, but they drafted some very young players who, as the season goes on, will continue to develop and I think get a lot better. And in the next few years, it will be a very good Falcons team. For now, I think that the defensive line is going to be a pretty big concern. And as long as Tua and these Dolphins wide receivers are healthy, I think they'll be able to spend some time just sitting in the pocket, throwing the football, moving it against this secondary, even though it's very solid. The Dolphins get their second win of the season here, taking them all the way until week 8 to do it. The next game is the Baltimore Ravens. This time they have them at home, but I don't know how much that's going to matter. You got Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, great wide receiver room, and just all around one of the best teams in the NFL year in and year out. They have a great defense again. I think the Dolphins are going to struggle heavily in this game. And I mean, there's not much to talk about here. Ravens win this one very easily.
Especially considering that this Dolphins offensive line, even though it did draft an offensive guard this past season, is still one of the worst in the NFL. And when you're going up against probably the best defense in the NFL right now on paper in the Baltimore Ravens, it's not going to matter. It's a super easy win for Baltimore here on Thursday night, right before Halloween. And then it's a rematch with the Bills, this time at home. And we already talked about the Bills quite a bit, and I really don't expect the Dolphins to steal a game from the Bills. It is hard to beat a team twice, especially with the second time around being a home game for the Dolphins, but I don't expect the Bills to drop either games to Miami, especially considering the concerns they have on defense. And then it is a trip to Madrid to face the Washington Commanders, the first game being played in Spain in NFL history. And I think it could end up being an interesting one, assuming all of Miami's offensive players are healthy, because, like we've already mentioned, they will have one of the most explosive offenses. But you know who else has an explosive offense? The Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels, after an incredible rookie season, leading the Washington Commanders to the playoffs and to the NFC Championship game, losing to the eventual Super Bowl champs in the Philadelphia Eagles, is looking like he is going to have an even better year too. Terry McLaurin Terry McLaurin has had some contract negotiations and some issues, but he actually is back in training camp right now. They added Deebo Samuel to the wide receiver room as well. The offensive line has gotten better with the addition of Josh Connerly Jr., who they drafted out of Oregon, and getting Laremy Tunsil in a trade with the Texans. The defense is also going to be very solid with a lot of younger guys from last year who are continuing to develop. Once again, I just think the Commanders have way too much going for them. They are the more complete team. I trust their defense a lot more. And they're going to get the win over Miami in the first game in Madrid, dropping the Dolphins to 2-9 going into their bye week.
After the bye week, the schedule does lighten up a little bit here. You start off with a home game against the Saints, and we really don't like the Saints team this season. They drafted Tyler Shuff, and it's looking like he's going to be the starting quarterback. And I think the weapons are solid. You have Alvin Kamara, who's getting kind of old. Olave has been dealing with some concussions. Chase Young on the defense is good, but just overall there's not much depth on this team. There's a lot of weak positions that have there's a lot of positions that have just not very good players that are going to be starters. And I think the Saints have a long way to go in this rebuild. They're going to be a very bad team this year, and the Dolphins will fully be able to take advantage of that. Then it's game two with the Jets. And I think in this one, the Jets having the home field advantage is going to help them out a little bit. You give Fields that much time in the regular season to really get settled into the Jets offense. I do think he'll improve as the year goes on. So I do think this Jets offense is probably going to be a little bit better than when the Dolphins played them the first time. But it's really hard to beat the same team twice. I think that the Dolphins are going to be able to win this one. It'll be really close, especially with a lot more things going in the Jets' favor this time. I just don't see them beating the Dolphins both times this year. So I do think that Miami can get to their fourth win in this one.
And that fourth win is also their first win in the division. They have one more chance to get a second win at the end of the year when they play the Patriots, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Their next game is a road trip against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have really shaken up this team compared to last year. George Pickens is now at Dallas, but they brought in DK Metcalf from Seattle to be their wide receiver one. But their biggest addition is bringing in Aaron Rodgers as their starting quarterback. And yes, he is a multi-time MVP, but he has not been as good as he has been in the past these last few seasons. Obviously, he had his first year as a New York Jet cut short due to that injury. And last year he was fairly solid, but I don't think he is going to be a huge game changer for the Steelers. Still probably an upgrade from last year with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, but I don't really think the Steelers are going to be much better than they have been the last few seasons. Probably still around that 9 to 10 win mark, keeping Mike Tomlin's streak going. But defensively, you have TJ Watt on your defensive line coming off the edge. You have Derek Harmon, who just drafted out of Oregon, who's going to be very, very good as well. The secondary added Jalen Ramsey from the Dolphins, so this is a bit of a revenge game for Minkah Fitzpatrick, considering he was on the Steelers until he got traded for Jalen Ramsey. But the Steelers also have another really young and up and coming corner in Joey Porter Jr., who has been very solid the past few seasons. Overall, it's kind of the same story for a lot of these games. The Miami Dolphins play against a good defense and a competent offense. I don't see how they're going to be able to get a win. Throwing the fact that this is a Monday night game on the road, Steelers are going to get the win here. And then they play basically their twins in the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday night the following week because the Bengals are in the same boat. You have one of the best and most explosive offenses in the NFL with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown out of the backfield. And then you look at the defense, and it is an absolute mess. The secondary, much like the Dolphins, also pretty much non-existent. The organization is trying to work out a deal with Trey Hendrickson to keep him in Cincinnati while also paying him the amount that he is owed. And if he does end up suiting up for the Bengals, then I do think the defense is at least going to be a little bit better considering how good Hendrickson was last season coming off the considering how good Hendrickson was on the defensive line last season. It's going to be an absolute shootout considering neither of these defenses probably can stop the other, but I would bet on the Bengals to get one stop over the Dolphins getting a stop against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. They dropped to 4-11.
Then it's arguably one of the most complete teams in the NFL and their fellow Florida team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I think that this is going to be an incredibly difficult offense for Miami to stop. When you look at the fact that Miami's secondary is their biggest weakness, and now they have to face Baker Mayfield with a wide receiver core of Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Emeka Egbuka, their first round draft pick. This could be a nightmare for Miami fans. And the Buccaneers also have a very solid running attack with Rashad White and Bucky Irving. So I really cannot see the Dolphins being able to stop this offense. This very well could end up being just an absolute blowout. The Bucks have a solid defense too. So I think they'll slow down Miami's offense. Really don't see Miami winning this game. And then to close out the season, game two at the Patriots, another really tough one. I think by this point in the season, Drake May's had another full year of development. Connor talked about Travion Henderson earlier. I think he's going to have a great rookie season. Just overall, another really tough offense for the Dolphins secondary to stop. I think the Patriots win this one as well. So they do get the two-game sweep of the Dolphins, meaning that Miami finishes at 4-13, which is significantly worse than last year where they went just 8-9. I think the floor is maybe even one more loss going down to 3-14. It's going to be tough to get there. Really, this Miami team will win a couple games that we're not expecting them to. And I think 4-13 is probably a little bit low for the prediction, but when you look at their weaknesses, it is very, very possible. I think the ceiling is their record from last season. I do not see them having a winning record this year. I just don't think that there's enough pieces here to have a solid team in Miami. The Vegas over-under at 7.5, and it's basically an even split. So they are favoring Miami to be around 7 or 8 wins. I really don't think that's going to happen. I think our prediction of 4-13 is at least a lot more realistic than, 7 or 8 wins again.
And I will say that our prediction is also partly based off the fact that we don't think the Dolphins offense will stay healthy the full year either. And if any of those key offensive players go down, along with already having a weak defense, then this team is absolutely cooked and will stand no chance against such a difficult schedule. Like Jonah was saying, 8 and 9 is probably the absolute ceiling. Maybe it can get bumped up a little bit if everyone stays completely healthy, but the odds of that happening are very, very low. So this prediction of 4-13 does seem pretty realistic with the concerns that they have. So thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more of our content, and we will see you in the next video.